Gogh. Please welcome Geert Wilders.
Thank you, my friends. It's always a pleasure to be in Copenhagen. It's a pleasure to return for me to this wonderful city, the home of my good friend and fellow freedom fighter. I have to call him my hero because he is Lars Hedegaard. It's always a pleasure to be at the capital of the Danish people, and it's an honor to be a guest of your great organization. The Danish Free Press Society is a beacon of light. Don't underestimate what you have in Denmark. It's a beacon of light for Denmark, for Scandinavia, for the whole of Europe, for the entire West. Your staunch defense of civil liberties, such as freedom of speech, serves as an inspiration for many, including myself and my party. And on a moment like this, where the free world, indeed, I'm not so positive, I'm not so optimistic, where the free world is in mortal danger as we speak, an organization such as the Danish Free Press Society is more needed than ever. So thank you, my friends, for being here. Exactly 10 years ago today, my fellow countryman Theo Van Gogh fell as a martyr of free speech. And I remember that morning very well. I was sitting in my office in the Dutch Parliament, and my security detail that I just got a few weeks before started getting nervous. Journalists came asking me if I knew what happened and if I really would give a reaction, but nobody could. Nobody really believed and sensed what happened at that moment, 9:45 in the Netherlands on November 2nd, 2004. But we all realized that the Netherlands would never be the same again. Unfortunately, very few lessons have been learned since that horrible day in 2004. Islam, as you know, claims that Muhammad was a prophet. But Muhammad was not a prophet. Theo Van Gogh was a prophet. Van Gogh saw what was coming. He spoke out forcefully against the danger of Islamization. And as you all remember, he also just made a short movie together with my then colleague Ayaan Hirsi Ali about the plight of women in Islamic society. A movie called Submission. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is why he was murdered. And his assassination should have been an alarm bell. But it was not. Van Gogh warned us in a strong language. He used very strong language, as clear as the colors that his great-grand-uncle Vincent used when painting his landscapes. Theo Van Gogh was a brave man. When he realized the dangers of Islam, he did not run away like a coward. And he would have hated to see how our freedom of speech has been restricted in the 10 years since his death. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the more Islam we get, the less free our societies become. And that's not only because of the Islamization process, but also because of the weak appeasers who call themselves politicians in Denmark, in Holland, all over the Western world. We are no longer allowed to crack jokes or to draw cartoons if Islam feels insulted by it. If you do so anyway, your life is in danger, as Westergaard and Lars Vilks can testify. You might even get arrested, as happened a few years ago with the Dutch cartoonist Gregorius Nekschot. Sure, the charges against Nekschot were later dropped, but if you value your life, if you prefer to avoid trouble, the message is better not to do anything that might remotely insult Islam. We are no longer allowed to tell statistical truth, as Lars Hedegaard experienced when he referred to rape figures in Islamic families. A murderer came to Lars' door, and the state authorities prosecuted him for so-called hate speech. Sure, the Supreme Court eventually acquitted Lars. But then again, the message is that if you value your life, if you prefer to avoid trouble, it is better to keep quiet and not to offend Islam. We are no longer allowed to refer to scientific and historical research, as my friend, the brave Austrian human rights activist Elisabeth Sabadic-Wolff experienced. In a seminar on the historical figure of Muhammad, she mentioned that Muhammad had a crush on little girls and had sex as a pedophile with a 9-year-old called Aisha, which is, as we all know, the truth. But Elizabeth was convicted, and her conviction was even upheld by the Austrian appeals court. Once again, the message is that it's better to remain silent and not tell the truth if you want to avoid trouble. But Theo Van Gogh did not remain silent. And neither did Kurt and Lars and Elizabeth and Robert and my party and so many other freedom fighters in the West. We speak out. We will never be silent because we love our country, because we love our freedom, because we refuse to live in slavery, because we believe that without liberty, life is worth nothing. Liberty and human dignity, that is what we all stand for. So we are, as a matter of fact, the torch bearers for freedom. We are the torch bearers for democracy. We are the torch bearers for a civilization that indeed is far superior than other civilizations on earth, like the Islamic civilization. Last summer, in my hometown, The Hague, I witnessed scenes which brought back memories of the darkest period of our history, the Nazi era. Sympathizers of the Islamic State paraded in our streets, in the streets of The Hague. They carried swastikas. They carried the black flag of the Islamic State. They shouted, "Death to the Jews." And instead of rounding up these hate mongers, the authorities did totally nothing. But when we warn against Islam, the authorities call it hate speech. They bring us to court. But when the grim forces of hatred march down to our own streets, the police look on and do not interfere. It's a disgrace. It's a scandal, and it's intolerable. Islam, ladies and gentlemen, Islam is waging a war against the West. Indeed, we are at war. Only fools can deny it. For Islam has declared war on us. And America and its allies are currently bombing the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. And that's excellent. My party supports this offensive, and I'm glad that Dutch and Danish F-16s participate in it, and that our two nations stand shoulder to shoulder in this endeavor. We should liquidate Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and all the other criminals who are leading the Islamic State. The sooner, the better. But we have to do more than that. Far more important than fighting the Islamic State abroad is the fight to preserve our own security in our own countries, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in all the other European and Western countries. It's our homes that we should protect. It is just, once again, it is just to bomb the Islamic State in the Middle East. But our first priority should be to protect our own nations, our own freedoms, our own people, our own children here at home. Recently, the Dutch authorities prevented more than 40 jihadis to leave our country when they attempted to go to Syria to fight in the ranks of the Islamic State. Their passports were seized and they were sent home. They were sent home instead of being jailed. So these criminals now walk the streets of the Netherlands and make them unsafe. You may have heard that the jihadis who recently murdered soldiers in Canada were also people whom the authorities had previously prevented to leave Canada for Syria and who were not arrested. Can you believe it? Who were not arrested and went free on the streets of Canada. And blocking the exodus of those who want to wage jihad elsewhere and not detain them is sheer stupidity. Keeping them in our own countries as free people means that they will hit us here. So we must hasten their exit instead of preventing it. But let them never return. This is the thing we should do. Not stop them from leaving, promote them leaving our country, reinstate border controls, and let them never go back. I rather want them to behead people. I rather want them to behead people in Syria than in Denmark or Holland. It's as clear as that. Nothing is more important than first protect our own countries from the jihadis. Let us restore our liberties, such as freedom of speech. I am very much in favor of a First Amendment in all the Western societies. And I'm jealous on the US that has a First Amendment. Let us defend our culture. You're not a racist if you're saying that we are better, that our culture is better than the Islamic culture. Be proud. Don't be afraid. Whatever they call you, just say it. We are proud. Our culture is better than the Islamic culture. Let us be brave. Maybe this is my most important message for today. Be brave. Do your duty. Let me ask you, do our authorities do their duty? Unfortunately, they do not. They fail to do their duty. They fail to act accordingly. They even lie to us. Every day, we hear Western leaders repeat the sickening mantra that Islam is a religion of peace. And whenever an atrocity is committed in the name of Islam, whenever somebody is beheaded in Syria or Iraq, Barack Obama, David Cameron, my own Dutch Prime Minister, Mr. Rutte, and many other of their colleagues rush to the television cameras to tell the world that it has nothing to do with Islam. How stupid do they think we are? Are we stupid? We are not stupid. Look at the Quran. See that Quran and Islam means violence. Look at the Quran, Surah 47, verse 4, which says that whenever you meet the unbelievers, smite their necks until you caused a bloodbath among them. How more Islamic do you want it, Barack Obama? Fortunately, and I'm not positive about Islam, as you might have found out already, I'm not a believer in a moderate Islam. I don't believe in it. It will never be there. There never will be a moderate Islam. Look what is happening in the Middle East. Look what is happening in our countries. It's getting worse instead of better. You cannot change Islam. But there are, of course, moderate people. And I believe in moderate people. Fortunately, the eyes of ever more people are opening to the reality that the political elite is lying and not doing enough. In my own country, in a poll from last June, just a few months ago, it showed that 65% of the Dutchmen are convinced that the Islamic culture does not belong to the Netherlands. And in France, 74% find Islam incompatible with French society. And in Britain, fewer than 1 in 4 think that following Islam is compatible with the British way of life. And in Germany, over 2/3 of the population think negatively about Islam. Even in the Czech Republic, a country where you can hardly find any Muslim, almost 2/3 consider Islam a threat to society, and 90% are afraid of it. And here, in your own country, Denmark, 92% of your citizens believe that Muslim immigrants should adopt the Danish cultures. And with every new terroristic crime, with every new attack, with every new beheading, it becomes clear to ever more people in our societies what the true nature of Islam really is. With every Islamic assault on our values, more and more people realize that Islam wants to conquer the world, that they are prepared to kill or enslave anyone who refuses to submit. Islam means submission, and that is ready, people are ready to commit the biggest atrocities to achieve this goal. My friends, we are gathered here today because we, as I see it, are neither prepared to collaborate with evil nor to appease it. We say no. We say no to Islamic censorship, and we say no to politicians that fail us. And indeed, since during the last 10 years, I've been living under constant police protection. But I'm not the only one who has to live through this ordeal. Several people here present in this room are in the same situation. Our friends Lars and Kurt even came to stand eye to eye with fanatics who tried to slaughter them with an axe or with a gun or whatever they can find. And of course, as I said before, and I cannot repeat it enough, I believe in moderate people. I believe in moderate Muslims. But I do not believe in a moderate Islam. There is only one Islam, and that is the Islam of the Quran, the Hadith, and the life of Muhammad, who is an example for so many Muslims, and who was a terrorist and a warlord. Nothing can change that. But even though there are many moderate Muslims, it is wrong to think that the moderates are in a majority. I wish it was true, but they are not. A poll in the Netherlands gave shocking results. It is hard to believe, but almost 3/4, 73% to be exact, of the Muslims in my country said that Dutch Muslims who go and fight in Syria are heroes. Can you believe it? Heroes. So yes, it's a minority of the Muslims who want to use arms and be violent themselves. But 3/4 of them, at least in the Netherlands, support jihad, even believe that the ones who are going to Syria are heroes. So we have an enormous problem in our societies, and we should not be politically correct, but tell the truth. Over 2/3 of the Islamic population in the Netherlands consider religious rules of Islam to be more important than our own secular democratic rules. And equally terrifying was an article yesterday in the Dutch press stating that Mohammed Bouyeri, the murderer of Theo Van Gogh, is still considered a hero today by hundreds of Dutch Muslims. A few years ago, I called on Muslims to liberate themselves from the yoke of Islam, to choose for freedom. I wholeheartedly supported Muslims who love freedom. So I told them, free yourselves, leave Islam. And I still stand by this appeal. But it should not, and it does not blind me to the present reality. And you may have heard, I believe Lars already mentioned it, that I will probably be brought to court again in the Netherlands. 3 years ago, I was taken to court on hate crime charges. The court case lasted almost 2 years. Fortunately, I was acquitted on all charges. But now, today, 2014, the Dutch judiciary is going after me again because I asked Dutch voters whether they wanted more or fewer Moroccans in the Netherlands. And you have to understand that Moroccans are the largest Islamic population in my country. In the Netherlands, the Moroccan problem is the problem of Islam, as a matter of fact. And I refer to Moroccans not because I have anything against Moroccans, but because they are overrepresented in the Dutch crime and welfare statistics. They also account for almost 80%, more than 3/4 of all Dutch Muslims who leave for Syria today to wage jihad. No one in the Netherlands wants more Moroccans. And as I said, our leaders still refuse to defend our freedoms because they are cowards and appeasers. And this is why the task of defending freedom has now fallen on us, on you, on me, on ordinary citizens. And to this end, we have established the International Freedom Alliance, IFA. We want IFA to be a shield for all of those who refuse to submit to Islamic tyranny. And our mission of this new international organization, IFA, is to stop the Islamization of non-Islamic countries, like Denmark, like Holland, but also Canada and Australia, and fight for the preservation of our freedoms, our liberties, and our democracy. And we want to stand firm. We want to preserve our freedom, our values, our civilization for our children and our grandchildren. Because we know that there is nothing more precious than liberty and freedom. But we also know that to defend it comes, unfortunately, but it comes with a price. And the price can be very high. But sometimes a man, sometimes a people must give all they can. There is no alternative. There is no other option. We have to be brave and we have to stand up. And our political leaders may fail us. But my friends, we will not fail. There is a path we shall never choose. And that is the path of submission. My friends, I also have some good news from the Netherlands. Today, I'm glad to say that the popularity of my party, the Party for Freedom, is at a high. An opinion poll just published this morning shows that we have by far become the largest party, the number one party in the Netherlands, with almost... Thank you. Thank you. With almost 20% of the vote. 1 out of 5 Dutchmen would vote for my party if there would be elections today. Unfortunately, there are no elections today, but they would vote for us today. And the policies that we stand for are also more popular, getting more popular than ever. And there I fully agree with Daniel Pipes. The positive thing is not the politicians, but the positive thing is that the people of our societies are waking up. Are wakening up. We have to stand up. And what is the policy that my party advocates? We want to stop, a full stop, for all immigration from Islamic countries. Whatever we do, if we don't close the borders, if we don't getting more people from Islamic countries in, everything will fail. Trust me, immigration is number one. Second, we want to stimulate the voluntary re-immigration from people to Islamic countries. Third, we want to expel all criminals, even if they have dual citizenship, deprive people of the Dutch nationality and send them away. And fourth, we want to de-Islamize our nation. No more mosques, no more Islamic schools. Enough is enough. Dear friends, there is a lot of work to do. We, the defenders of freedom and security, have, as I believe, an historic duty. Our generation has been entrusted with a huge task to oppose Islam and to keep the flame of liberty burning. And I say it without exaggeration. The future of human civilization, the future of freedom depends on us, depends on you. Now is the time when everyone in the West must do its duty. If we do our duty, we are writing history here today. So let us do our duty. Let us stand up with a happy heart, but with a strong spirit. Let us go forth, be courageous, save our freedom. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, any comments? Yes, Ivan? Question.
Mr. Wilders, Mr. Wilders, could you please comment on the fact that you made your speech in the buildings of the Danish government in contrast to your what you experienced in England?
Yes. So I'm very happy and proud, by the way, to be here in the Danish Parliament. You are a very strong, one of the oldest democracies of Europe, and I'm proud to be here. Unlike the oldest democracy in Europe, which is the United Kingdom, England to be more precise. Indeed, I went there a few years ago and I was not allowed to enter. There was some socialist secretary of state or something that said that I could, just being there, could defend or offend, to say, Muslims, and they jailed me, put me in a detention center when I arrived and sent me back the same day. But the good news is that the court overruled that decision, So I wonder what will happen if I will go there in a few months' time after being prosecuted again. But once again, I'm very happy to be here and proud to be in the Danish Parliament. You guys do a better job.
Aya?
Yes, Peters. You say you want to abolish all mosques. How does that go with the freedom of religious expression? Don't you think it's going a step too far to abolish them?
Yes, I like to go a step too far, because then you get half, and then there's a compromise. So always go a step too far, please. My advice to your politicians as well. I didn't say no more, I said no more mosques, which means no extra, no mosque being built extra mosques. And I believe, once again, according to me, I know about the freedom of religion. But if I'm honest, and I studied Islam quite thoroughly in the last decade or even more, and I'm not the only one of this opinion. I believe that Islam is not so much a religion as it is a totalitarian ideology. Sure, it looks like a religion. It has a temple, and it has an imam, it has a holy book. But at the end of the day, unlike other real religions, it wants to rule every aspect of one's life and of society. So I compare it, and I always did, this brought me, took me to court once, but I survived, is that compare it to other totalitarian ideologies, like communism or fascism. If you, in the past, wanted to leave communism or fascism, the penalty was death. This is what totalitarianism looks like. You cannot leave it. It's the same that happens with Islam when we want to leave Islam. The penalty is death. It's not the case with Christianity, Judaism, or Buddhism. So there are many other arguments, but I believe that at the end of the day, Islam is not so much a religion, but a totalitarian ideology, and therefore we should not have to grant them all the rights that our constitution gives to the freedom of religion. It's not a majority point of view, but we look at it.
Mr. Wilders, recently we had two imams threatening and encouraging to kill Jews. Both of them are living here in Denmark. At the same time, the authorities will throw the street artist Dan Park to jail for making some pictures. Do you have any good advice as to how we change this poor development, please?
Yes. Vote for other politicians, vote for better politicians, vote, if you have any, for politicians, and I know you have, that would not accept this kind of atrocities. I mean, if an imam would say and would advocate what you just said, there is, I would say, no room for this person being an imam in Denmark. And I can't even imagine that somebody with even 1 ounce of brain would disagree with me. So if you incite to violence, this was incitement of violence, I believe that you should either be jailed, sent out of the country, but certainly not be an imam anymore. And if we don't stand up to this kind of measures, nothing will help, because once again, we will give them the signal that it's acceptable, that we are dhimmis, that we are cowards, and we should not do that. Don't accept it.
Yes? Any more comments from... Yeah.
Geert Wilders, thank you very much for your speech. Probably we could stretch it a bit further. I think you were quite moderate when you said Islam is a totalitarian organization. Would it be more correct to call it a military organization? Look in their mosques, you have those lines, like military soldiers standing on lines. It's common in countries which have not yet been conquered, but there's a sword beside of the speaking place of the imam. If you leave the organization, they kill you. Of course, desertion in military organizations.
Well, yes, I do agree. First, thank you for the compliment. I think it's the first time in my life I'm being called a moderate. I hope the press will write it down. I didn't call a moderate. They would love to have that. But I agree with you. Of course, it's military. Of course, and this is part of totalitarianism. If you don't adhere to what the totalitarian ideology believes, you will pay a price. And look at the flag of Saudi Arabia, where underneath the Shahada is the sword on which Muhammad, even when he went from Medina to Mecca, when he made all this atrocity, Jewish tribes, as we see today happening in Syria and in Iraq, is exactly the same. So yes, it is military. My point is, don't be. You know, I always learned, I traveled, I lived myself in the past, a long time ago, in the Middle East. And I know one thing, that you have to think as they do to be able to conquer them and to defeat them. They declared war on us. Not every Muslim, but Islam declared war on us. And I believe that we should start thinking as them. And if we are not tough in the most severe way, they will see us as weak. They will believe that we accept it in Denmark, in Holland, in Germany. So what we should do, and this is why I said that in Holland almost 80% of the people subscribe to that. If you are in Holland or in Denmark, you are welcome to stay if you adhere to our laws, to our values, to our constitution. But there is a red line. And if you cross that line, whether you are the imam or somebody who wants to kill an apostate or whoever threatens anybody, we will pick you out. We will strip you of the Danish nationality and we will send you back into any country in the world. This is it.
Yes, Daniel?
As you know, I admire your courage and your clear analysis, but I also disagree, as you know, with one thing you say. You said there will never be a moderate Islam. And I don't know how you know that. Islam has changed. I'm a historian. I'm a historian. Studies change over time. Everything human changes over time. I took up the study of Islam in 1969, 45 years ago. Islam is very different and much worse than it was in 1969. If it can get worse, it can get better. Islam changes. I can we have a seminar and I'll tell you about how Islam has changed. How do you know it can't get better? How do you know there can't be a modern Islam? Why are you rejecting this possibility beforehand? No. Lars is skeptical, I accept that. But you're saying absolutely no, it can't happen.
Yes. Well, Danny and I know each other for a long time, and we do respect each other, and we have had the discussion many times before, and sometimes we even agree to disagree. But indeed, I don't believe that Islam will ever change. Islam is the word. Look at the Quran. The Quran is, together with the Hadith and the life of Muhammad, Surah, the Quran is the way, the basis of Islam. And the Quran, Muslims believe, is the word of God. It cannot be changed. And of course, people change, Daniel. I believe that. I don't believe that Islam has ever changed in the past. When it got worse, and indeed it did, it gets worse every day, and it's because people change. And people change, unfortunately, for the worse, not for the better. So yes, I believe that even though today it gets worse every second, look at the Islamic State, look what is happening in your country, in my country, that will not change. But the people can change. And I'm not a theologian. I believe that, once again, why people believe in Islam, it's none of my business. But I am a politician, I'm a lawmaker, and I tell you what I just told you before, that I'm not interested if it's changing or not. I'm interested in the people. And if you adhere to our values, you're welcome. And if you are not adhering to our values, you have to go, you have to leave. I don't care if it will change, but it will not. I care about the people in my society. Will women in Copenhagen, in Amsterdam, be free to walk the streets? or will they be harassed? Will children be free to walk our streets? Will homosexuals be beaten up in Amsterdam by Moroccan news or not? This is the question we should answer. And if the question is no, we should send them away and stop the immigration of countries where we have this harassment. That is the only question that I want to answer.
Daniel, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, we have argued this point for a decade and more. And I agree with your point about the actions being unacceptable and people changing. So we agree on that. But still, you made very clear in your opening remarks that Islam, modern Islam, there'll never be a modern Islam. So let's put aside the actions of people. Fair enough. Why can there not be a modern Islam? The Quran remains the same, but interpretations of it change. Let me give you one example. There's this short phrase in the Quran, "La ikraha fi din," meaning there should be no compulsion in religion. This is a phrase which over the millennia has changed its understanding, its interpretation. I wrote an article in which I showed some dozen different historical understandings of what this term means, from the most rigid and limited to the most liberal. Now, every aspect of the Quran can be dealt with the same way. For example, there are contradictions in the Quran. And as it is now, it tends to be the more severe that are accepted and the less severe which are rejected. That could change. This is human. This is not divine. This is interpretation of the Quran. Interpretation of the Quran has changed and is changing. And it has changed for the worse, and the more severe. Why don't you admit the possibility that it's changed for the better?
Well, you know, the Quran and Islam knows a rule called abrogation. And abrogation means that the latest verse in the Quran is valid and invalidates everything that is written before. That's the rule that even moderates in Islam agree with. So indeed, yes, there are passages in the Quran that were saying maybe not too harsh things, but they were, at the end of the day, replaced through abrogation by many parts of the Quran, which I don't believe in, many Muslims believe in. That is the fact today. Second point, it's the Word of God. It's the Word of God. There are not interpretations today about, there are no Arab or Islamic yeshivas being active today, but people study and interpret the parts of the Quran. They are not existent. So please, let us, once again, agree to disagree, but let us not focus on something that I believe will never happen, and you believe it might happen in 5,000 years. But I am interested in what will happen today and tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and our country should be safe and safe from the brutality of Islam.
I give the word to Lars Hedegaard, another historian, and then we have 3 more questions, and then we'll stop. Lars?
Well, since I've been dragged into this discussion, much against my will, let me say that, yes, I'm very sceptical about your position, Daniel. I respect you very much, as you know, as a scholar and a thinker. I happen to deviate from your position. The thing that concerns me is that yes, there might be something called modern Islam sometime in the future. It will not be Islam as we know it. Might as well call it something else. But as long as the Quran is the word of Allah, and the Hadith is what Allah instructed Muhammad to do and say, that could always be reenacted. It's a latent threat that can be actualized at any point. You said that it's become much worse over the past 50 years. True. But it has become much worse. Then you'd get something better, then it could become much worse again by reference to these texts that are unchangeable. And that is my position.
Yes, Thomas?
I'm a picture man.
Well, the mic. The microphone.
Microphone. Okay. Good.
Doesn't work.
the time. I said, I'm a picture man, and this is a question to Daniel Pipes, as a historian. Isn't it so that you could compare Islam to a flu? It goes worse and disappears and comes back next year. That's my question about change of Islam.
500 years ago, the three major monotheistic religions shared a number of features in common. For example, all of them prohibited interest on money in some fashion or other, and all of them permitted involuntary servitude, slavery. Over those 5 centuries, Jews and Christians changed. For example, the United States made a huge war, civil war, over slavery. There's no one now who said, you know, on second thought, maybe slavery is a good idea. We should reinstitute it in the United States. Nobody says that. It's gone. It's done. Christianity has been modernized. Judaism has been modernized. There's no one who says that interest on money, 2%, 3% a year, is illegal. Everybody accepts these things. And the status of women and many, many other issues have fundamentally changed in these two religions. They have not changed in Islam for various historical reasons, but they can change. And once they change, and once slavery has really been rejected, and interest has really been accepted, which it's not been, and the status of women has really changed as well, and many, many other things, then you have a modern Islam. It will not go back to being a pre-modern Islam. There are shifts that have taken place. Christianity is a very different religion from what it was 500 years ago, or even 200 years ago. It's a very different religion. I urge you to do some reading on it, how remarkably it has changed. Judaism is a fundamental... Spinoza from the Netherlands was excommunicated from Judaism because he said you don't have to follow all the laws. Nobody says that now. Of course, most Jews, 90, 85, 90% of the Jews do not follow the laws. Judaism was historically a religion of laws, and it's not so for most Jews now. So the fundamental changes that take place in religion, and it doesn't just go back and forth, it is fundamental shift, and I look forward to Islam undergoing a similar fundamental shift.
Yes, Lone, Nørgaard.
I want to agree with you, Mr. Pipes, but I tend to agree with Geert Wilders. Thank you for a great speech. You really have a great rhetoric, and I try not to get too affected by it. But I want to stick to some of your more pragmatic suggestions. You speak about duties, you speak about sacrifice. I want to get away from the big words and we'll have to fight and we'll win and whatever. I see things getting worse. What are we going to do? I'm 62 years old. I've been in this criticism of Islam for 10 years. I've studied, I've written, I've tried to do all that I can, and things are getting worse. I try not to be too melodramatic, but should I sacrifice my life? Would it be a good idea if I wrote an article such as Monsieur Redeker's calling Muhammad pedophilic, and then be sure to getting a fatwa? Should some of the older ones sacrifice themselves? Would that change something?
What a question.
It's a very good point, and of course, I would want you to live tomorrow as well, not only today. But numbers matter. Numbers matter in a society and in any democracy. So the easy question would be, and it's the truth, that at the end of the day, an only change in democracy, unless you want revolution, but we are Democrats, is to change the political sphere in your country, to elect other politicians who are not afraid. And how do politicians work? I'm a politician for 15 years. Most of the politicians look at their constituents. What are their concerns? What are they doing? And of course, we don't all have to write an article like some of us do, or make a cartoon, as the brave cartoonist Lars did. But to make a point is that you have to get numbers behind you in politics. At the end of the day, that is the only change. And I'm positive there. Look at many countries in Europe, not only my own party. Unfortunately, not so much UK, because they are more interested Daniel in immigration from Eastern Europe, and I haven't heard them speak anything yet about Islamic immigration. But still, I mean, there is a change within the people. And if we now elect stronger parties, that will be the best thing to do. Not extreme parties. I mean, the biggest problem in the United Kingdom always was that you had only conservatives and you had the British National Party, which were really racist, and nothing in between. Now we have another party that perhaps doesn't address Islam so much, but will bring a change in the political atmosphere. You here have the Danish People Party. In the Netherlands we have a party. In France, even though you might not agree with everything that they stand for, the Front National, certainly under the leadership of Marine Le Pen, is a different party, a strong party. She might be the new president in the future of France. So yes, there is hope. Politicians are doing too little, and politicians will not change. They will not change their lies and their tune of false correctness, their idea of, well, not so much not culturalism, but cultural relativism, that all cultures are equal, if they know that they have to pay a price at the ballot box at elections. This, at the end of the day, is the only way to do that. Find more people, have more meetings, have some of you indeed write an article, go and rally on the street, do anything that a democracy allows you to do, but at the end of the day, vote for politicians and let the old one, the old elite, that has only things to gain by no change at all, let them know that they will lose if they won't change their tune. It's the only way.
You need the press to be a part of it.
And the press is the biggest problem indeed. Did you say that? No, but indeed, we need the press. And the press, if you allow me to say a few words, because it's a very good question. The press are, in general, not our friends. They are mostly leftish, liberal, politically correct. Not all of them, sorry for the press who was here. No, not all of them, but many of them are. But even they cannot ignore numbers. I'm not a historian. I respect historical people very much. I'm a politician. And I know that numbers work. And if you don't have a press, make your own press. Make your own YouTube channel, make your own Twitter account, make your own Facebooks. The days of old politics that you have to write an article in an evening standard are gone. And we can benefit from that, sir. We can, and we should.
Yes. One last question.
Yeah, this is a question to Mr. Pipes. It was a very good speech, and I wish I could share your optimism. For me, the big question is maybe Islam could change to the better. But what's the point if they have destroyed Western civilization and in 100 years get better? Do we have the time? I compare it a little to the climate debate. We can see all estimates says in 100 years the sea level will be rising 1 meter, and we take the cautions now. And I see it's the same way we have to take the cautions and not just say, oh, they will maybe change, it happened before. And again, what's the point if they destroyed Western civilization? Will it change?
Well, thank you. It's a good point. I should make clear that I'm very much in favor of taking steps to defeat Islamism, whether it be in Syria and Iraq, or Nigeria, or in Europe and more broadly in the West. Yes, we must defeat it. We must do to the Islamists what we did to the fascists and communists. We defeated them in total war in World War II, in the Cold War, One very violent, one not so violent. But in both cases, at the end of the war, the totalitarians realized that they were trying something that failed. And these no longer are exciting ideas. It wasn't so long ago that communism was an exciting idea. It's not anymore. It's defunct. It's North Korea. It's Cuba. It's defunct. Well, likewise, let's learn from these victories and apply the same methods to Islamism. Let's defeat it, whether it be by bombing installations in Syria or by taking steps such as Mr. Wilders suggested we take here. We can debate the specifics, but the goal is to defeat them, that they have a sense that we win and they lose, that we are victorious, they are defeated. Now that's one point. We are in complete agreement. I just picked out the one area where we have all the time argued, and I thought it might be useful to argue this once again. Maybe he's changed his mind. So it's just that little specific thing, which really is not that important, because whether you believe there can be a modern Islam, whether you believe Islam can evolve or not, as you correctly point out, is not the issue of the moment. It is a theoretical issue. It is not a practical issue. And on the practical issues, I think all of us agree.
One very, very, very short question from Jeppe Juhl. Hey, stand up, please.
I do understand what you were saying there, but that entails somehow some rationality from the opponent. Because what is a victory? Is that extermination? Is that the reform renounced with hatred? What is this victory? How do you define victory?
I define victory in that the opponent has a sense of frustration and defeatism, such as happened to the Nazis and the communists.
Okay, we have to close.
If we could defeat the Nazi machine and the Soviet machine, surely we can defeat the Islamist machine.
Okay.
I don't think they're rational. I think that's a very, very important point.
And the Nazis were more rational than the Islamists? I'm not sure that we want to debate.
I think the debate will go on, but this was the very last answer to the last question. The conference has come to an end, and I would like to thank you, the audience, for coming here this Sunday, spending your Sunday afternoon in our company. And of course, I would like to thank our speakers for giving such thought-provoking and interesting contributions, and for being such a great inspiration for all of us. For us in the Free Press Society to keep on doing our duty. Like Geert Wilders said, our duty is to defend freedom of speech, and we are now more inspired to do so than we were this morning. Thank you. Next year there is another anniversary coming up. It's the 10th anniversary of the Mohammed cartoons. And the Free Press Society is already planning a conference on the day for the publishing of the Mohammed cartoons in the daily Jyllandsposten, the 30th of September 2015. And I hope we might see some of you again at that occasion. Thank you.